Here's someone who used to provide this beautiful life for his family, and all I can do is get high and steal to provide for him. Grew up in a suburb right outside of LA called Camarillo. It's a nice upper middle class neighborhood. Seemed to gravitate towards kind of the wrong crowd. Really bright and intelligent, but didn't apply myself in school. Around 6th grade, I started experimenting with drinking and smoking marijuana. Freshman year of high school, I was introduced to many different drugs, hard drugs like cocaine, and all the other drugs I tried, I never really had a connection with, but when I tried meth for the first time, it hit a spot with me, and I could tell that there was like an attraction there to that. I was on medication when I was younger, a lot of ADHD medication, so the meth kind of like calmed me out and mellowed me out at first, so it became easy to use it on a daily basis. All throughout high school I used meth, as well as other drugs, but primarily meth. When I graduated high school, I didn't have plans to go to college. I was working odd jobs. My meth abuse really got out of control. I went from using on the weekends like I did in high school to using out of control every day. My weight dropped from close to 200 pounds down to maybe 160 pounds. Noticeable amount where, my family was concerned. I really wasn't ready to admit that there was a problem because I thought I had control of it because I always worked the job, paid for my drugs, even though I probably lived in and out of my parents' house and friend's house. A few years after high school, I realized my problem was getting out of control, and I thought maybe it was the neighborhood I lived in or the community I lived in or my friends. Decided to change my life, and I went into the Marine Corps when I was 20 years old. Did a lot of drinking, was in the Marine Corps for 5 years. Being off meth, I was able to really focus on my life, get married, have a child, go to college. For 5 years I was disabled out of the Marine Corps. And at that point, I got out, finishing my last semester of college, have another child, married. I moved back to the same neighborhood where I grew up, and I started doing the same thing. At this point, my life was different because I had a great career. I graduated college, I had a BS degree in computer science. I started doing IT work, and it provided really well for my family. But getting back to the same neighborhood and never addressing my issue of addiction, I continued to spiral back out of control and went into all the same behaviors that I had before. I stayed in California for a couple years and decided, much like before, that I needed to get out of that neighborhood, I needed to get out of that environment. Thinking that was going to solve my problem with the drugs, I moved to Phoenix, Arizona, and the drug use just continued even worse. I was good at my job, so I felt like I wasn't doing anything wrong. I paid for my drugs by working. I made a very good living, provided for my family, house, kind of like the whole picture that you see, the beautiful wife and kids in private school, wife staying at home, husband working a job, paying for everything they need. But really it's inside I'm empty. I could barely control my drug addiction, and it takes over my whole life and affects my family negatively. The problem gets worse and worse. Soon, work starts to have a problem. I get arrested for a drug charge, and the job that I had requires you to have a clean record, and I get a drug charge and I lose my job. And at that point, that's where my addiction really spiraled out of control. At this point, my family was intervening. They wanted me to try to get help. I don't know where to get help, and I think that I don't need help. I'm so lost. Really like a lot of meth-induced psychosis, staying up for days and even weeks on end. And then my use spiraled so far out of control without my job to control me and my life. I became severely addicted to drugs, lost our house, our car, moved into a smaller house. My wife at the time started working to take care of the kids, and at some point I made a decision, I say consciously, but really in a drug-induced haze. I started doing burglaries, breaking into abandoned buildings and stealing the copper wire out of it to take it to the scrapyard. So my charge went from not being able to get a job because I had a drug charge, but being able to possibly get a job, to not taking any recommendation to get help. And before I know it, I have multiple burglary charges, and I'm looking at decades possibly in prison. That still wasn't enough to stop me. I would get out of jail and I would do it again. The state finally decided to put a GPS bracelet on my leg so they can control where I'm at, because I would dodge the one in the car and My wife had to get an order of protection against me. I wasn't allowed to see my kids, my wife, lost everything, couldn't even begin to get a job. And at that time, my mom intervened and kind of gave me a last chance and got me in contact with a fantastic rehab. I still didn't want to go. I would run, I would not listen, and I got hit with divorce papers and paperwork from the court saying that I'm not allowed to see my own kids. And at that point, it's when I finally decided to go to rehab, you know, because you know, it was just time, right? Like you lose your kids, you can't see your kids, you can't be a father, you can't work a job, you can't do anything. I went to rehab and I learned a lot of new tools to deal with my problems. Worked a program, got clean off drugs, got out of rehab. At that point, once you sober up and you realize all the damage that you've done, all you want to be able to do is go back and change it. But unfortunately, you can't do that. So probably my only regret in life is not taking these recommendations sooner to get help. By the time I get out of rehab, I'm looking at many years in prison. The best deal I could get was a few years. And so upon getting out of rehab, I show them, you know, my attorney gets everything they can, shows them I'm a disabled vet, shows them I went to rehab. And the judge gave me a pretty good deal of 2.5 years in prison, you know. And at the time I didn't think it was a good deal, but looking at it now, it's what I needed. So I was clean, I was off drugs, I went and I did my time, and I got out and started to rebuild my life. And it's been a struggle, you know, the struggle of your past you have to deal with. Not getting help for so long, I did so much damage to so many different relationships. It took years before my wife had trust in me to let me see my kids. And, you know, having such a severe record, even with all the qualifications that I had to do that kind of work. I worked at McDonald's, but I remained clean and I kept working my program, going to meetings, helping others. And it paid off. And after a few years of struggling and digging ditches, I'm finally back working in IT and doing what I want. No regrets to my life, except I wish I would have gotten help sooner before I did so much damage to all my relationships. But my life today is good. You know, if it wasn't for rehab, I would probably be dead, you know, laying in the gutter with a needle in my arm. And today, I see my kids unsupervised. I can do whatever I want with them. We have a great time. I'm part of the community. I'm part of helping others. I go and speak at rehabs, and I talk to people, and I work steps. Have a sponsor. So there's still a lot of wreckage from my past to clean up, but I'm working on it day to day and just taking it one day at a time.
Detox to Rehab wants to help as many people as possible and do it the right way. Please subscribe, comment, and like our channel. Thank you for watching.